you're always going to see the gap. You're always going to focus on the gap. If everything is on the horizon, your goals are on the horizon. They're always going to change. They're always going to be that far out. I used to live life like, well, this is what it's going to look like in a year. And then I was finally like, wait a minute. Someone actually said it to me like, wait, no, you need to live for today. What's up, guys? It's Scott. Today I have with me my really good friend, Alex Joudy. And hey, look, he's been on a trip. So I'm like, dude, we got to chat. I want to catch up and I want to capture it because I want you all to know that we have some really cool stuff to talk about. So you really just need to tune in. It's going to be awesome. But first, one thing we're going to be talking about is the big event, Montana. Kick ass, right? So this is in September. And look, do yourself a favor, just listen to this and then go to brotherhoodfatherhood.com/events. There's no oven there. So brotherhoodfatherhood.com/events and just go sign up because we're going to sell out and you just need to get on that list. We've already sold some. I'm super pumped. We already got, Anyway, what's up, brother?
What's going on, man? I feel like I haven't talked to you like this in a while. It's
been madhouse.
Yeah, it has. So like you were saying, we took a trip. My wife and I went to Ireland for a week, and that was our first solo trip in 10 years.
That's awesome.
I feel weird saying stuff like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that kind of stuff. I'm like, I'm not old enough to say that.
So we'll get back to the Ireland trip, but I was on a walk with my wife, and I'm like, I'm turning 49 next month. And her jaw just about hit the ground. She's like, 49? You can't be that old. I was like, thanks, babe. But the reality is it's real, dude. It's crazy. You're younger than me, but it's crazy.
Well, what's funny is, like I'm at that age where my kids are at that age where they joke around about like, they call me an old man. Right. And that's just normal, right? My son's 13 and you got two boys that are teenagers and but I really think about this, and I'm not saying this at all to be super arrogant or cocky, but I thought that you always think that the previous generation or things like that, like, oh, everybody looked older, that kind of thing too. You look back at pictures and stuff, but it's not just the generation. It's like health, right?
Yeah.
Dude, I know people that are 30 that look twice as old as you do.
Yeah.
Well, you don't look like you're going to be 50. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous. Right. And then I was still, besides like the gray, you know what I mean? Like it's, being in, you move around just the general population and you see people that like drink all the time and smoke all the time. And by no means am I saying I'm like this like pinnacle of like health, but like I'm in good shape, work out 4 or 5 days a week, jiu-jitsu, diet's awesome. Right. So I don't smoke. That's the big one. Smoking is the one that like ages you hard. Right.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
So, don't have like a hard lifestyle in regards to, alternative substances. So
yeah. Well, that really does age you.
Yeah, it does. So when I, especially like when I worked in bars and clubs for so long, I would see people. The funny one was when I would run into people like I went to high school with when I was still living in the area where I grew up, and they would come in and I didn't really recognize them. I'd see an ID. And I was like, oh, and they're like, hey, I went to high school with you. And I'm looking at him like, holy shit, what happened to you over the last 10 years? And this is like at 28, 30, 32. And it's just like, you've had a rough 10 years.
Yeah.
So the number isn't really a big thing anymore, man. No. It's really the quality of life, like where you're at. Like somebody's like, you don't look 42. And I was like, well, what does 42 look like? Like, what does 49 look like? Yeah.
It is a good question. People used to tell my wife and I all the time, like, you guys look like you're in your 30s. I mean, and this was just up until, and it's not bragging again, like a year or two ago, it's kind of declined. And I think that has to do with just up until, and it's not bragging. And so I'm like, okay, so that's happening. But again, don't drink. I don't live that hard lifestyle, never have. And I think that makes, it does make a big difference. But man, last year I took my wife to Costa Rica for our 25th wedding anniversary. And I was just like, man, I wish every man would just do something like this. Him and his wife would just go away. And have you guys done a big out of country trip before?
No. So this is our first one. Yeah. So this is May 20th. So this was like our anniversary trip. So May 20th is our 15-year anniversary. We've been together almost 19 years. And then, it's weird to hear you say it's your 25th anniversary.
Dude, we were high school sweethearts.
Yeah.
Got married right out of college.
That's what I'm saying. They're like, it doesn't even sound like you're old enough to have a 25th anniversary. 25, like quarter of a century, right? That's crazy. Yeah. So, but but with 5 kids, all being younger, getting someone to watch 5 kids is no easy endeavor. I mean, we even like looked a couple years back at parceling them off. Like, okay, the boy goes over here, and then we'll have her, maybe her sister or brother come into town and watch these 3, and just, it never really worked out. And then finally, like, okay, we have to just plan it and do it. And the time it worked out well, where my sister and brother-in-law were staying with us for a little while as they transition out of California and they're moving out to Nashville. So, and, so we're like, hey, can you guys watch the kids for a week since you're staying with us for a couple months? And they're like, yeah, it'd be great. So it was literally our first, And then once we, a couple months, just even on the plane, we were like, there's no kids. Like, what do we,
just us,
just us. It was great. Yeah. So it's literally our first trip in 10 years solo. Besides, like 5 years ago, we did like an overnighter when we were in Washington to Canada. That was like 3 hours. We flew her brother up just to come stay the weekend with the kids. It was before Phoebe was born, so it was only 4 kids. So
only 4.
Only 4. Well, we got 5 now, and then we got a dog, and just so but
dog.
Yeah, man. 5 down, and then we got a dog. Yeah, just the solo trip thing. But once we realized, like anything else in life, by day 2, we were just like, okay, we have to, like, number one, we really needed it for like our marriage. It was really important. Like the dates just weren't enough anymore. Like 2 hours here, 3 hours here, that kind of thing, even though those were important. But just that decompression and solo time. We're like, even though those are important, to plan these at least once a year. So we already planned our next trip before we left. Yeah. And then we'll book it, the whole thing. So that way it's just done. Because it's kind of like when we moved out to Montana, like we paid for the gym membership before we even had a house, right? Like you got to put a flag down, so, okay, we're doing this. This is going to happen. And then we'll figure out the logistics. I mean, kind of like this event, right? Like we've been planning this for a few months that we got coming up, and it got to a point where like, okay, we just got to pick a date so we can actually start booking stuff regardless of like what happens. Right. So, and that's what we did. And now it's all right, here we go.
It's just a commitment level. Like you said, plant your flag in the ground. You and your wife are like, we're committed to doing this because we saw what this has done for us. I saw you shared some pictures of, you went to Ireland, right? Yeah. And you shared pictures, and I told you this in response. The pictures were phenomenal. The history, the architecture, all the things you shared were phenomenal. But my very favorite were the way that you guys were smiling. I could tell you were enjoying each other and just feeling free. And, I hope you're okay, because I'm just going to drop this, but a year and a half or 2 years ago, you really had to like dig down and work on your marriage together. Yeah. Which, so for me, I'm going to get all emotional about it, like literally, because I watched you, like you were struggling, you were hurting. I'm going to get all emotional, and both of you, because I watched you looking at that. It was like, I'm not your dad, but it was proud dad moment, because I remember you saying, hey man, I have to focus on this part of my life right now. And then here you come full circle, and you guys are beautiful pictures. You can see the smile. You can see, unless you're really good at faking it, but you can just see in deeper that you were just happy. And so really proud of you guys for doing that. But thanks, man. I really like that. You're just already, this is where we're going. This is kind of the timeline, because then you have to make things work. And it was a lot like the event we're running. Like once you like say, hey, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, it's going to cost me this much money. It gets real. No, for sure. And it's because you can, I've talked about this ad nauseum in multiple platforms, but that concept of like someday and soon, and like, it's this fairy tale place, right? Like it doesn't exist. Right. Man. Like unicorn land, I call it. So it's horizon. Yeah. Horizon is never in front of you. No, it's always there. It's it's such. I learned about this in a book called The Gap and the Gain, and it's a really good book. I would recommend it to anybody. But it's like, hey, look, you're always going to see the gap. You're always going to focus on the gap. If everything is on the horizon, your goals are on the horizon. They're always going to change. You're always going to be that far out. And so I love that you said that, because I used to live life like, well, this is what it's going to look like in a year. And then I was finally like, wait a minute. Someone actually said it to me, like, wait, no, you need to live for today. And what does that look like? It looks like living for today looks like planning a trip a year from now. I know that sounds weird, but you're actually not just planning it. You're doing action steps to get there.
Yeah. Cause if you just say like, we're going to go to Ireland, we're going to go to Costa Rica, well, when are you going? Sometime and then just like day by day, life happens, week by week, month by month, but people say all the time that it seems like time moves faster when you get older. It's not that time moves faster. You're just doing more things. And ideally you are, when you get older. You know what I mean? It's not that from a standpoint of like you're busier, especially if you have a family, even if you don't, if you're involved in multiple businesses, whatever it is, right? So there's more things that happen throughout the day. So it seems like it moves faster. But it's good in one way, but the other side of it is it could be detrimental because you're not actually committing to doing things for yourself and actually putting that, like we said, planting that flag. Like I'm going to a jiu-jitsu seminar in Vegas in June, right? So just doing things where like investing in yourself, like not just jiu-jitsu or like investing in your, or anything fitness endeavor or whatever you want to do. Or like your buddy Leland who came out here to do the Spartan race, right? Like doing things like that, I think are really important for number one, like self-development, but number two, kind of taking care of yourself. Because think about it, right? Especially if you have a family. Like how often did you go take trips with your buddies when you were younger, right? Like a Vegas trip, a camping trip, that kind of stuff. And then how much does that not happen as you get older? Whether you have a family or not, that as you get older and you take on more responsibilities, you tend not to like plant those flags and say, okay, this day I'm doing this. I'm blocking off this time, regardless of what it is. I got a buddy of mine who's a sheriff here, and he blocks out like a year ahead of time. He blocks out weeks for hunting trips, for snowmobiling, for like, and he's married. He has kids. He's a full-time sheriff, but he still does all these things. And sometimes he gets a little flack for it. They're like, oh, you're always off like dicking around. Like, I wish I could ditch my responsibilities. It's like, dude, I plan it. I plan it like a year out, because that time's going to come regardless. Right. So,
right. Yeah. And that's such a really good skill. You brought something up that has been really on my mind. I've been thinking a lot about like, why are we doing an event for Brotherhood and Cornerstone? Like why? And the real thing is, because if we don't, who will? And honestly, we've created something we want to do.
Yeah.
And this came from, and we've told this story multiple times, from me saying, hey, what's an event I can take my son to or whatever? Like I need some leadership things. And you're like, dude, you just reached out. We just got to create our own, like, we got to stop talking about it. It's like preaching to the choir a little bit, like, let's do this. So I'm super excited. I think, I've talked to all the guys that have paid so far. And I said, like, what are you looking forward to the most? And this is a real epiphany for me. So I want anybody who's listening to really kind of get a hold of this. They're like hanging out with you guys.
Yeah.
They're like the shooting, super cool. The BJJ, super cool. The rucking, super cool. The fireside stuff, super cool. But really, it's just the connection and hanging out with cool guys. I was like, but I thought about it. I'm like, that's really what it is. But you're also just doing really cool things with those guys. So it's like the ultimate combination. So I'm looking forward to it. But I've done a lot of soul searching. Like, why haven't I done this stuff before? Like, why haven't I involved myself in any of these things before? It's because usually these things have like one thing, like you're going to go do something really hard. You're going to do like this massive challenge, or you're going to go, just learn about guns and you're not going to know anybody there. I think it's more of like having people, it's a little bit bigger or tighter of a scope. We're going to do a bunch of things with guys that are really like-minded. They all want to grow. They all want to be better husbands, fathers, business owners, leaders, whatever the case may be. And that's really the differentiator. So I turned this into our event conversation, which wasn't really intended that early, but
that's all good.
I'm really looking forward to it. So what was the best part of Ireland, man?
It's twofold. It was, number one was definitely spending all that time alone, without the kids with my wife. Like that was really, I didn't, on some level I knew we needed it, but at the same time, I didn't realize like how much like we really, really needed it until, day 2, day 3 in there where, and it was great because we had like a general itinerary, but we didn't schedule it like hard. And we would spend days, we'd walk like 5 hours, 7 hours around like Dublin, Galway, these different places. And it was so cool just to walk down the street and you turn, you see a sign and like, oh, this monastery founded in like 1084 AD. Like it's just like right there. Right. And don't get me wrong, I love America, but it's just, you forget sometimes how young it is in regards to like our architecture and things like that. Right. So seeing stuff like that, it's mind blowing, especially for like the first time. It's there, you read about it, that kind of stuff, but it's so different when you're actually there, and so getting to experience different things, realizing that this is a large coffee. Like, I was like, hey man, I ordered a large coffee. And they're like, you American jackass. Like, it's like this little like 8-ounce cup. And like, that's a large. I'm like, that's not large. How dare you? Where's my Slurpee coffee?
Yeah.
No, that was fun. Just the different things you experience in a different country as far as with driving on the left side of the road. Well, that was weird.
Oh, it is. It's so
first
weird.
time I'd ever done that. So in a stick. So if you want to double down on a challenge and scare the shit out of your wife while she's in what she considers the driver's seat and is now the passenger seat.
Sounds awesome. I didn't drive when we went to South Africa a few years ago. I didn't drive, but it was opposite side of the road, and it was such a weird experience. You did feel like you're going to die. It's that
like left right brain like paradigm. You're just like everything's flipped, right? It's almost like it's like looking in a mirror, but but like in a camera mirror. So like because you click in the camera, like you can flip it. So the other hand is moving, like, and so it's just weird, man. It was totally this like dynamic of having to kind of rewire how your brain worked and how your motor function is with like shifting.
Yeah. How did you get a manual I own a manual transmission. I have a standard transmission truck. It's a 2021. I mean, and I love it, but how did you do that?
Well, in Europe, they're all like, well, let me rephrase it. At least in Ireland, right? There was the majority of the cars that are all like stick. And even the buses, they're all like manuals, like the newer ones. They're all, it's funny. No, not the big buses, but like the little transport buses. Yeah. So, but so that was funny. And, I didn't think about it because we got off the plane. It was like after 20 hours of like, hopping flights to get to Ireland, and then I'm half asleep and they're just like, oh yeah, have you ever driven on the left side of the road? It's like, nope. And then they have this whole diagram. Like, when you get to a roundabout, go left, don't go right, and then, and then when, there's no turn on red ever. Like if it's red, everybody stops, right? Because like here we got right turn on red, right? You just treat it like a stop sign. Over there, no, because especially in Dublin and downtown where it's so packed, it's kind of like New York or LA where you've got so many people walking. It's so dense in this compact space. It's like all the lights turn red, then everybody walks. Not just like this crosswalk, like all 4 directions. Everybody gets to walk. All the cars stop. So there is no right turn red or left turn red there. So there's a traffic rules. A couple of things were different. But when they mentioned like, oh yeah, and it's a manual, or I was like, oh, okay. And I got down there and I don't know why, but we get to the car and open the door. I was like, oh yeah, I got to go to this side. And then I see the stick on the left. I was like, what the hell? And I was like, well, of course it's on the left. It's going to be the center console. It's not going to be in the door.
That's got to be so interesting.
It was so weird. So shifting with your left hand, I was like, wait a minute, did they flip the pedals too? Because if they had flipped like the gas and the brake and the clutch, I would have been like, nope. Like I'm gonna crash before I get out of the parking garage.
Yeah.
So, but no, that was fine. So
very cool.
It was fun. After like a day and a half, you start to get used to it, but you don't realize how much you start veering to the left, because when we drive and we're driving on the right side of the road and we're sitting on the left hand, we always constantly keep the car towards the left, right? But you've been driving for 20 years. And all of a sudden you're getting used to keeping the car on the left, but you're on the right hand side. So you're not gauging how close you are to that side. And my wife's like, oh my God, you're gonna hit the wall. Because the car keeps going.
Oh man. Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah. All the things to think about. Like, but don't think about them before you go. Just go immerse yourself in it.
Just go have fun. Yeah. Like the worst case scenario, if after a day, and I would have been like, look, I'm going to kill myself or I'm going to hit something. Like, I don't feel safe driving. I would have turned the car and we would just Ubered everywhere. It takes taxis, like it would have been fine. So it was nice when we were driving across the island and having a car, like our own car, we can go and just make stops wherever we want. And so that was cool. And my sister and brother-in-law were with us. So I mean, my sister and brother-in-law, both of them, like my wife's sister and her husband, they came with us, and yeah, so that was fun.
Yeah.
And and some days like we'd hang out together, and other days we would like they'd want to go do something, or like, you know, and he was more like wanted some stuff scheduled out, and my wife and I were more like, we're just gonna go wander for 7 hours.
That's
like,
awesome.
We'll meet you back at dinner or something like that.
I think that was a really smart move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just so you guys could connect on your own.
Yeah. No, it was really, really good for us. So yeah, that was you know, just that quality time and experiencing things with my wife was really important. And then the other part of it was that I guess she had this idea that I wouldn't, you know, because I'm like the uncultured swine and she's the intelligent one, right? So, but I guess she had this idea that there was these things that I didn't want to do with her, like, you know, experiences, right? So like wander around Dublin or go see 1,000-year-old churches, you know, go to museums. Like she thought like I was not interested in doing that with her. And every day she was like, what do you want to do? I'm like, whatever you want. Let's just go walk around and go find shit to do and go experience stuff. Or let's go check out like the Dublin Castle or, you know, whatever it was. Right. So I think doing it with her and her seeing I was actually engaged and I found interest in it and I wanted to do it with her and I really enjoyed it. It was really good for us. Right. Like that connection. Right. Cause I could say it all I want, but for some reason she just kept thinking like, oh, you don't want to do this stuff with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's good to work through that. Like, and I think it's really good for men to put some of their own expectations just aside, be like, I'm on board with what my wife wants to do. And maybe that's hang out at the pool all day, or maybe it's adventure, you know, whatever it is. That's awesome. And I think it's also good to leave the house, let the kids kind of experience life without you as well. You didn't come back to a burnt down house or kids with no hair or anything, right? Everything went well.
Everybody was good. Yeah.
Probably renewed. It probably gave them a little more appreciation for you guys as well.
Yeah. No, they did really well from what I heard. And they're a little bit older now, which is good. You know, I mean, they're still young, you know, 4, 9, twin 9-year-olds, 11 and 13. But one of the things we started getting a lot more over the last year, being out here in Montana, is we get a lot of people that come up to us and tell us that they get to know the kids or talk to them. They said, your kids seem older than they are. Oh. And so I'll take that as a really good compliment, meaning that they're, when I ask them, what do they mean? They say like, well, like, I don't expect to carry a conversation with a 9-year-old like that, or like with your 11-year-old, or like I can't remember the last time I talked politics with a 13-year-old, you know, and he actually had reference, like, not like he's just this political genius, but like he actually he's paying attention to world events. He has an opinion. He, like when you reference something, he's not blind to it. He's paying attention to what Elon Musk is doing, like all the, you know, so for me, I take that as like, okay, we're doing something right, like as parents. Cause sometimes, you know, you feel like, oh, you're just utter failures, you know, because you pay attention hard to the losses versus like your wins on a daily basis as a parent. Right.
Well, dude, you just talked about the gap in the game and gain again. I mean, that's that whole book is teaching you how to do that. I remember learning this from a coaching course I was taking a couple of years ago, and they're like, you should be doing wins with your kids every day. So I started doing that, and it was really hard. What I learned and what I realized is that unfortunately in school, our community, our culture, we're focused on where we need to improve. What did we not do up to the best of our abilities today? And that goes to the kids. So it was really hard for them. Like, ooh, what did I do good? What went well today? Like, and it's as a training. It's got to be a training. So it's good to see that. Like, got to focus on those good things.
Yeah, no, that was good. And then, the Guinness Factory, I never realized how big it was. Places.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, it's like 8 blocks. Like it's huge. Yeah, it's like the Disneyland of beer, you know. And the history, right? Just the history of you know, how long it's been there. And then when you first walk in, they have like encased in glass on the floor, like one of the original, like they have a 9,000-year lease for that property, right? You know,
so when they first,
I know. So, and just the whole history behind it and like how it was strategically placed. It wasn't just they opened a distillery anywhere. It was, or brewery. It was, you know, they specifically, he put it there because that's where there was like, you know, fresh running water coming down from the mountains. And it was so interesting to learn about that process. And I didn't know there was a way to drink Guinness. Like it's not like they taught you how you're supposed to drink it. You know, you're not supposed to sip it. You know, you got to take like big gulps because you get the sweet flavor from the bottom, and then you get that bitterness from the from the foam top, and then combined it makes like that true taste of Guinness. And we got to pour our own, from tap. They taught you how to do it and how you wait for it to settle. Yeah, it was so cool, man. It was fun.
Wow, that's really cool. I've talked to some other people who've gone through that process. Josh actually is one of them, I believe, and he was because he's been there. But it sounds epic. I just think that everybody should get out of the country.
Yeah.
I think there's just such a good perspective that happens on what's going on in your own life, what's only part of like the US and not part of the rest of the world. And sometimes it diminishes our concerns, and sometimes it shows why we need to be concerned about things. So I just think it's such a great experience.
Well, it gives you perspective too, right?
Yeah.
Like it gives you a different perspective. It gives you also, like, if you don't have it already, like a good appreciation for, because there's some things that are really great about it. And then there's not so, like, Ireland is generally like a socialist country. So there's a lot of other things, like nothing opens till 9 a.m.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, cause you don't have to, right?
Wow.
And then that's kind of when it starts. And then, so like going to a coffee shop at 8:30 and they're not open yet. It's like, okay, well,
I'll just dream of caffeine at this moment.
Yeah, I guess nobody wakes up till 8 a.m. It's just so, but it's you don't realize what certain things that are that you would consider normal here in the US versus like when you travel overseas. So it gives you a different appreciation for things, right? Yeah. And there are some things that they do better. You're like, oh, that's a smart way to do it. Like tipping, right? Like it's not a thing there. They don't, like in restaurants, right? Like you have to ask when they like on a card to pay more. Like, so you have to tell them what number you want to put in. There's no line on there to write in the tip because they pay their people more. And it's not a cultural standard there. So, So when you tip them, they're like, oh my God, thank you.
So that's so funny because we were eating out with my oldest the other day, and he's like, there's people that want to get rid of tips. And so what they're doing right now is they're just not paying. And I'm like, well, they're like trying to prove a point. I'm like, that's really not the right way to deal with it, because these people tend to get really low hourly wage. They can make great money with the tips. So it needs to be a little more systemized if we're going to do that. Just not tipping somebody's actually hurting the process. But yeah, that's a whole nother conversation in of itself. I like to tip. I think it's,
I do too.
Yeah.
I don't like that here it's an expected thing versus like what it was supposed to be, which was like, thank you for this exceptional service. Good job. That kind of thing too. Now it's, I specifically remember one time, it wasn't even like at a high end restaurant or just a normal diner. Service was horrible. This was before we were even married. My wife and I were just dating at the time. That tells you how much it was like ingrained in my head, like how much it annoyed me. We were talking like, 15 years ago, 18, whatever it was. Service sucked. The waiter sucked. Just, rude. Always acted like we were bothering him when we asked for something. And like, hey man, like you work here. So literally it's what you do. You're called a waiter, So bill comes, right? And, give him the card, for the bill. And I paid exactly what the bill was. And then, signed it. And then I crossed the line. I learned to do this. Like you don't leave stuff blank. So I crossed the line across the part where it said tip, so they can't write anything in, you know what I mean? So, so I did that. And then I made sure I got a copy of the receipt. And the guy had the balls to say, hey man, you forgot to tip. And I was like, no, I didn't forget to tip. You see here, I actually crossed it out to make sure you don't get a tip, dude. That was horrible. Like, he started arguing with me.
Oh, there you go. Real great at his job.
And I told him, I was like flat, and the manager came out and he's like, what's the problem? And I told him, we were talking to him, and I'm young, so I'm not being like super, I was in my early 20s. So I wasn't being very like tactful, in a way, but the guy was being an asshole. So I wasn't, and I told him exactly what happened. He goes, well, he might have had a rough day. I'm like, that's great. Sucks. You have a rough day, but you sucked at your job. So,
well, if the manager starts arguing with you, you can see where it comes from. It comes from the top. There's an expectation. Sure. Doesn't matter how we perform. We're going to get what we want. My wife went on a trip with my son to a small town they were visiting, and they ordered an Uber, an extra large Uber. An SUV showed up, and my son had a large golf case, and he's like, we didn't put this in the back. Guy's like, no, it's all my stuff back there.
Yeah.
And made him sit with the golf cart. The golf thing barely fit in, and he had his feet up, like his knees were in his face.
What?
My wife was up in front because it couldn't fit. And the guy's windows were tinted so dark, he had to roll them down, freezing. He had to roll him down every single time he needed to turn because he couldn't see out. And I'm like, do not tell me you tipped this guy.
Yeah.
And she tipped the Uber driver 10%. And I'm like, no, tip is not a given. It's an earned added bonus. I mean, I'm like, and I'm like, did you rate him?
Yeah.
Like, well, I rated him well because I didn't want him to be mad. And I'm like,
what?
Yeah. So, we got, there's this place in between, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like, it becomes this cultural thing and avoiding, confrontation and that kind of stuff. And I even remember like talking, in that conversation with that waiter and the manager, and I said, do you really expect to get a tip even if you do a crap job? Like, do you expect to get a tip? He's like, they only pay me like $4 an hour here, right? And I was like, that's your choice. Like, you chose to come work here.
Right.
So if you're choosing to take a job that pays you like barely below minimum wage at that time, and I said, and you expect to survive off tips, maybe you should do a better job. Like, yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. It's like being in sales and having your entire income is based on commission and just being shitty at it and still expect to get paid. I'm like, you haven't sold anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's an entitlement thing that I really have an issue with. I really do. I really struggle with it when somebody just feels like they deserve because they're breathing.
Yeah.
We could go probably talk about that all day too. Things are going pretty well for you. You've had a good 6 months.
Yeah. Everything's going well, man. I have you can find stuff to complain about, but no, everything's good. I have no complaints in general. Life's good. Business is good.
Good.
Marriage is doing well. Like you mentioned earlier,
putting in the work.
Putting the work in and making it work and doing the things I need to get done. Don't get me wrong. It's not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but from a standpoint of where we were like over a year ago when me and you were like looking to start getting into business together with podcasts and things like that. And then I had to put a hard break on that and be like, hey, some stuff came up and I got to really, put the work in here with my marriage. Otherwise I'm going to lose it. That wasn't that long ago. I mean, It was about a year ago, actually. Now that I think about it, we're in May, right? So that was it was right after my father-in-law passed away, and that was in February. So, and then all this stuff started coming up in like March. So yeah, just over a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So. I think there's a while back, I felt like everything was going right in my life, right? Like everything was smooth. Podcasting was going good. Group was growing well. Business was doing well. Marriage was great. Kids were in a good place. And I just kept thinking every single day, like, all I need to be doing is enjoying the moment, but preparing myself for the next challenge.
Yeah.
And it's a hard mindset to have when everything's just going great. But it just seems like you're doing really well. And I was, like I said, I was really pumped when you said you were taking off to Ireland. What's the status of your podcast? You're kind of on a little bit of a hiatus.
Starting back up again. I actually have episodes booked to record. My wife and I started ours back up again on Wednesday, put a hard one in. I just kind of realized where I was, a few months ago, I was getting to a point where a couple of other things I was doing were taken off and then just busy time-wise and required certain things. And I didn't want to get to a point where, like, I noticed I had to start like rescheduling podcasts and rescheduling this because calls were coming up and I was taking on more responsibility with some other things and then not overbooking myself with like my family too. And I said, okay, well, where can I take a break? And of course, just from a standpoint of like income and family time, and whatnot, podcasting, even though I love doing it and it's something that's really enjoyable, it's not it's not something that was at a point where I have all these commitments to podcasting in regards to like a bunch of sponsors yet and schedule and that kind of thing too. Right. So, kind of a little bit bittersweet where like I had to take a break on that because I didn't want to just put stuff out just to put stuff out. You know what I mean? Yeah. So now in a good groove coming back from the trip, and I kind of pared some stuff down, and I even got better at kind of optimizing my time with like systematizing some stuff, learning a few things actually from working with your company VAs for Gym with the podcast, right? Yep. So I was able to apply that to my business.
Right on.
And so that freed up a lot of time for myself. So now I'm like, okay, I'm ready to kind of get back into doing them now too. So yeah,
that's good. I'm always trying to make sure that I'm as optimized as possible, but it's really, it's a work in progress, man. I mean, it's just like, and the beauty of the bad thing about that is, and I'd warn you and anybody, the more productive you get, the more you can fill time with work and other things. So you gotta protect it. It's like, nope, not doing that. Which I really value that you did that.
Right. Yeah. And you have to put in like, as far as, time where you don't do certain things. Like one of the things like I noticed where I can get myself in a little bit of trouble is when I try, because this makes like everything so easy, right? You can, I run a private security company. From like 90% of it is this, and then the other 10% is on the computer. So I probably spend like a hard 2 hours a day on my laptop. That's not a lot, right? And the rest is just maintenance from the phone. But there's times where I'm doing stuff with the kids, whether it's homeschool or whether I'm doing something like that, where I have it there because I have to monitor certain things, but I can easily start engaging and then going down rabbit holes. And then what happens is I start doing that, and then the kids need my attention, and I've given them the impression and the conversation, the commitment that like, you have my time for the next couple hours. Right. And then I'm telling them like, wait, and then I'm telling them, yeah, exactly. And obviously it doesn't go well. Right. So now, so I'm doing what I'm telling them not to do, which is like, hey, this task that should have taken you 5-10 minutes to do is taking you an hour because you've added more chaos to it and arguments and distractions and that kind of stuff too. So those are things I'm still like fine tuning and trying to get better at. And I think that's where, at least like in a marriage, I think that's where like the partner comes into play, because my wife's really good at, letting me know, and not like in a way where she just, nagging or harping or telling me like, don't work. Cause she knows, cause she runs an online business, but like, hey, you gotta, you said you were going to do this for 2 hours. Like, I understand you're running a company. Like if somebody gets shot, like you have to respond to it, or if there's an incident or something like that. But, if you said you're going to do this for 2 hours, put your phone down for 2 hours. Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So,
yeah. I've been suffering from a really bad neck and shoulder pain, and I haven't been able to get rid of it. And I realized that having the phone up in front of me is really bad. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to put my phone over there for hours and do everything. But, there's just, it's so easy to get sucked into it, and work will fill all the time. It will.
Yeah.
And I've always been like this zero notifications guy. So if there's a text that hasn't been read, or a message or email, and I don't know, I probably have it like 20 or 30 on my computer right now, like with 5 different apps. And I'm like, whatever. It is what it is. And what I found is that without putting out the fires, other people really kind of figure out how to put out the fires. Right. If you just ignore them long enough, they're like, oh, he's not going to answer. I got to figure this out. And I've realized that half the time when I'm like, hey, how can I help? They're like, I figured it out. I'm like, that's right. Okay. I need to train myself to not go so quickly, because we're actually doing people a disservice when we, put them at the forefront. And it's a constant battle.
Well, here's the thing. So it's like, how we were talking about, our trip and making it work and putting the time into, really, focus on ourselves, and like for my wife and I, just take some time away and whatnot, and actually having to plan it and do the commitment of, yes, we're going to do this trip, and here's how we're going to do it, and then we book the trip, and then we'll start planning the logistics as far as like getting people to watch the kids and do all that stuff too. But one of the things was when my sister and brother-in-law agreed to watch the kids for the week, I was like, okay, I got to make this as seamless as possible for them because they're taking on a lot of like, because it's not just babysitting 5 kids. Like they have a life, right? They have a school schedule. They have, I mean, even when we homeschooled and we pared down what was being done, they're all in jiu-jitsu, the different things like my son's in like Civil Air Patrol, like all these different things that they do in places they have to be during the week over like an 8-day period. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make a schedule for them and just make it really simple. Right. So I put the whole thing together and I hand it to him and they're like, holy shit. So you don't think about it like as a parent when you're just doing stuff, but when you actually write it out. Right. And here's the funny thing. So I'm going to, if you'll let me, I don't know if it allows or not, if I can share my screen with you really fast here.
I'm sure it'll let you.
Yeah. Okay. You guys see this?
Oh yeah. You got blocks.
So in orange is just their jiu-jitsu schedule, just in orange, like, Monday through Friday.
So if you guys see this, it's pretty insane.
Yeah.
If you're listening, it's insane.
Right. So this is their like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? And I even have it up here. You can see, right? So I made this whole thing out and we left Friday to Friday, right? So this is like in an 8-day span. The days, and then the days are not jiu-jitsu, right? It was like, and then we broke down like who gets to make what meal. So like my son likes to make breakfast this day. So we broke it all down, lunch, dinner, what days they get treats, church, school, screen time. And then I made like a chores one. So, and then of course, like the contact list, right? So I did all this stuff and it made me realize like how much we do on a daily basis with the kids.
Yeah.
And here was the awesome thing that I didn't realize, another win we got out of this. We put this together and I show the kids and that way they knew what, like, their aunt and uncle would know about what was going on. And I think like day 3, I got a text from my son. He was like, hey, I really like the schedule. It's really cool, And I was like, all right. And we got back and we asked them like, hey, did you guys like having that? Even though what you're supposed to do. They're like, yeah, it was awesome. I knew when I was supposed to shower. I knew whose day it was to do this chore and that.
Clear expectations.
Yeah, super weird, right? So now we talked to the kids. We're like, do you guys want us to keep doing that every week? And they go, yes. I say, cool. So now this is part of my routine I'm going to do, which is like on Sunday, I'll put the schedule out for the following week and just print it out and put it up on the kitchen, on the fridge, and the kids can see. And, because it is, of course, like I'm 42 years old. Like I have this expectation. One of my biggest frustrations is the kids not doing what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it. Right. Like weird. Right. Yeah. It's like my 9-year-old is supposed to be super task oriented. Like I know 50-year-olds aren't task oriented. Right. So giving her something on the fridge where she can see that, hey, today's my jiu-jitsu day. So I should have, and it even says on there, be ready by 3:45. Right. Yeah. So that means have your gi, have your stuff, boom, 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 so I
think that you just made a really good point. This is from kids and families is people just can't read our minds, and boundaries and expectations are incredibly important.
Yeah.
And, and understanding like what the expectations are. My wife does it on a whiteboard, but I'm thinking like, why are we doing it on a whiteboard when we could be doing it on a Google sheet? And it's so much more, but the boys check on that like crazy. Like, today after school, I have this. And, and I'm the one that runs everything from my computer. So I'm like, there's a whiteboard. Oh, okay. But it really makes a big difference with family efficiencies and then responsibilities. Your kids probably realize, wow, without realizing it, without verbalizing, they have a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. And that helped them a lot too. Cause I even put in there, cause we just got a dog a week before we left. Yeah. Right. So this puppy, and so I put on there, like, every hour, take the puppy out, for potty training and that kind of stuff too. So it made a really big difference. And it was even funny. I told one of my daughters who's 9, one of the twins, I said, hey, you got to go, do this. She goes, no, I do that tomorrow. It's on the schedule.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, cool. You're actually paying attention to it. So that's when I realized they really enjoy it. So they like that structure, in that way. Really cool. So no, it was good, man. So let's get to,
I was going to say,
right?
Yeah. What are you excited? I mean, if you guys don't know, we have an event in September, you fly in on the 8th. It starts that evening. It's the 9th, 10th and 11th, which is basically Thursday evening through Sunday, noonish or whatever. What are you most looking forward to on that?
I'm looking forward to, the whole event's going to be fun. I enjoy like just the fireside chats, right? I enjoy those conversations. And I think from day one to day two, after we do different things, and then being able to hang out with the guys afterwards, where it's just kind of mellow, food's getting there, and then we're just sitting around the fire and just and chatting. Like, you really kind of get to know people, and listening to their shared experiences and listening to, that's where people tend to open up to a little bit, especially after they've shared into something, like, whether it was the shooting or the next day on Saturday when we do that jiu-jitsu seminar. And, you get, having been a trainer for 15 years, right? People are very open when you're working with their body and diet and nutrition. So, jiu-jitsu kind of similar, right? So I'm looking forward to that, because I think there's going to be some really, really interesting conversations that come out of that, those days, with the guys. So
yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, because we went to a banquet this weekend for my son's band thing, and I was reflecting, like, I really just like spending time with my wife and my kids. It's like that's what I love. And then I'm like, but I'm really excited about this event, but I hate stuff like the banquet. And I was like, what is it? Well, what is it is that everybody coming to this event is going to have some similar interests, some similar goals, some similar drive.
Yeah.
And getting to know people, kind of other men who have similarities in some areas of life, but even if we're worlds apart in others, it almost doesn't matter, because there's areas where, you get to hone in and you get to know people. And I'm just looking forward to that closer connection, I think, is basically what you're saying. Yeah. As far as events, everything, the shooting, getting introduced to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I love rucking already. I better get my neck and shoulder fixed before. I mean, this is like 5 months or 4 months away or whatever. And I'm like, I cannot put a pack over my shoulder right now. I cannot roll jiu-jitsu. I've got to get that fixed. But I'm just really super pumped about the entire thing. I did commission one of my buddies who has a food service program. He fit field kind of fitness meals. He's coming, he's doing all of the cooking. So,
awesome.
That's going to be, I'm looking forward to good food. I like the fact that I can come eat really good food and not feel like I'm totally off base or I'm going to be sick because it's crappy food.
Yeah.
I know that, just that we're pouring so much into like the quality of the experience and the quality of everything that's coming into it. So I'm really pumped. Yeah.
And I think we're finding a good balance of, I think when we first started putting this together, you start thinking about how it's hard not to, because somebody's like, well, how do you plan the event? And the other part of it, from my end of it, was like, I'm trying to make sure, like talking to you, that you and I were like, okay, well, let's not pack too much into it, right? Because you can overbook super easily, right? Especially like when you start putting stuff together and people want to start getting involved more. People want to get involved, and not just from the standpoint of they want to come out, but they also want to do something, do a talk, present. It's just like, okay, are we inviting guys out to Montana to listen to 10 people speak in a day? Like, no, that's not what we want to do, right? Yeah. So there's a balancing act of like quality stuff, 2, 3, 4 hours of this, and then, all right, boom, downtime, right?
Yep.
Barbecues and So I think we've got a really good balance of both.
I do too.
From what I see. Yeah.
That's what I'm really excited about. And we actually have had a little bit of flexibility and kind of like arranging this and laying it out. And I'm like, this is really cool, because there's a lot of both. And it's not like, have you ever gone to something and you're just like busy the entire time and you just don't have the time to connect?
Yeah, it's too much. You feel like you're running from one thing to another, know, and like I said, I get it. Like, planning an event, I think part of it is like, as the event organizer, you're sitting there thinking to yourself, well, people are spending time and money to come out here. I want to make sure I'm giving them the most bang for their buck time wise. And what ends up happening sometimes is like you pack so much into it, and you lose quality because of quantity. Right.
Yep.
And it's like, well, we did 18 things today. It's like, oh, all right. Well, was any of it good? Did you retain any of it? Were you able to like have like, because I don't want them to have like Rob, Rob's doing a talk, right? I don't want them to do a talk with Rob and then have to hurry him up and like run 30 guys over to like somewhere else or bring, you know what I mean? And not actually get to sit down and have a conversation, ask questions and really kind of get the benefit of what that is. Right. Same thing with the jiu-jitsu. It wasn't a matter of like, hey, we're going to go do a class and we're going to go lift weights and then we're going to go shoot. And then like, no, like 2 different days. We're going to do like a 3-4 hour seminar. And I haven't even talked to you about, because I know you talked to Travis, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you've worked out some.
Well, he was like, 3 hours is like the max you want to be
Yes.
rolling. You guys are going to be,
for sure.
you guys are going to be trashed. But and I'm like, yeah, we're going to be trashed. But yeah, he's going to talk about business and life and he's got all sorts of stories to share, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
So we got him. I mean, I had one guy ask me, is like, well, is Rob going to run the seminar? I'm like, no, Rob's coach, his jiu-jitsu, whatever you call him, is running the seminar. It's like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, Rob is, I don't know what belt he is, but he's been doing this for a while. Yeah, he's been doing it for a day.
He's a brown belt. He's been doing it for a while. Yeah.
But we're bringing in people like Jason Piccolo. I'm really excited. I've been getting to know Jason really well. Just a lot of messaging back and forth. And, he's going to be doing the rock and also a speech. And I've read his book. One of his books he sent to me, and I read it on a flight. It was pretty quick. Really enjoyed it. And getting the kind of the insight into his life as a whistleblower in the government, which was this crazy story. But there's so much more there. I'm really excited for. So, and JT with the shooting. I've chatted with JT. He's such a cool guy. So we got
interesting. A family guy, interesting story on how he got out here to Montana and what he's doing now. And so, man, I think we put together, without sounding too arrogant, I think we put together a pretty sweet event, and
I would want to go
100%. Yeah, exactly. Because, and that's what's so cool about this is the fact that this whole thing started with you saying like, hey, do you know of any good events? And it's like, well, let's just make our own. And that's the wonderful thing about this is we get to really kind of fine tune it. And I kept looking at it, and I know you and Josh were too, which was like, okay, is this something I would want to go do? Is this something where I would invest time and money into to go? Even when we were trying to figure out the cost, right? Like I just booked a jiu-jitsu seminar, right, in June, a Henry Aiken seminar. And, I look at the cost of everything and then over 5 days, and it's a great cost, but I put it in comparison to our event and I'm like, yeah, we're doing all this stuff too. And it's like this, we're good. Yeah.
I was talking to Jason, and he's been a part of a lot of events. He's like, literally, Scott, I've been a part of events like this where guys will pay 30 grand.
Yeah.
I'm like,
isn't that weird?
Oh yeah. And I'm like, okay. So he's like, it's a massive value, but it's not like we're walking away. I'm like, I hope we come out even. We're putting it all back into it.
Yeah, especially for the first event. Yeah, man, it's really like want to put on a really good event. Want to get some really great experiences, meet some great people, network. Give these guys. I'm hoping to get a lot out of it, right? Even though we're the one running the event.
Oh, we've got
just from meeting people and building relationships and growing new ones, right? And just like being able to do all of that from the standpoint like with the event itself, like I'm really looking forward to like once it comes, just like getting involved, and I think the other part of like not making it so jam-packed is where like we can't even enjoy it, right? Because we're so busy running.
Oh
like,
my
you know what I mean? That's why I like how we blocked it, like we chunked it, right? You know, check the time here, break, check the time here, break. You know what I mean? So definitely helps too that we're doing it in a spot like, where it's like I live here. So like, I mean, we give guys an example. We were having a conversation about, one event we were doing, and then later in the day where we would be, and me being here, I can say like, oh, that's only a 15-minute drive. Right. That's it. You know what I mean?
So it's got a little easier then.
Yeah, it makes logistics a little bit easier for sure. So versus like, we all live in different areas and we booked a 4 days out in like Colorado, and none of us had been out there before, right? So
I do quarterly trips with men, and we travel all over the place. And I was just telling my wife, we go somewhere new every single time. I was just telling her like, I'm ready for us to go to the same place every time, because we just finally find the place to go eat and the place to order food from and the place to go shopping at. And I'm like, I like adventure and new places, but also for things to run really smoothly, you got to have a kind of those nailed down. So I'm looking forward to it for the same reason as you. And here's something I want to kind of nudge at some chords on is the fact that this is our first one, and I have no intentions of not doing more. The fact, if you look back on some of the really, really big things, like would I have loved to have been part of, Ryan Mickler's first get together, and then kind of be like this legacy type thing where I was at every single one. I'd be like, yeah, that'd be pretty cool, because you'd actually know who I was. And I'm not saying we're famous, but I'm saying come be a part of the first one and kind of have that legacy spot, because this is not in my mind, this is not the end. This is at least a once a year thing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. 100%. This falls right in the line. And actually, here's the thing. The trip to Ireland with my wife, she booked it for herself first, right? Because it was like, look, this is a bucket list of mine. I've been wanting to go to Ireland for a long time. I have family from there, like heritage. And my 40th is coming up in July and our anniversary. So I'm going to book it around our anniversary if we can. And this is where it's like, and we can go do a whole separate podcast on this, on how sometimes being selfish is really good for your marriage, right? Like doing things for yourself. Yeah. But and we talked about it. She's like, I'm going to book it. And then I'll message people I want to come, like her sisters. And if anybody can come, great. If not, if it's by myself, she goes, I'm going. I was like, okay, cool. So she booked it. She booked her tickets. And then it was, okay, if I can find a way to go, I'll go. If I can't, I can't. But, but her actually booking the trip put the flag down saying, okay, here's the marker. I'm going on this day. If we are going to find somebody to watch the kids, but we have dates, we have times, we have like all that stuff too. So let's actually work on the logistics of it. So when this concept of putting an event on was an idea, and then it was like, okay, well, let's pick a date. And then once we started doing that and it became real, then all like the fill in, like the work was actually starting to happen because we actually put it down. It's like, okay, we are doing this. And when we started booking people, like speakers, and committed to them and sponsors and things like that. So, okay, this is real, So So you have to put some skin in the game. Like you have to really put it in. You can't just like say like, okay, maybe I'm going to I might like, oh, it didn't work out. Well, it didn't work out because you didn't plan for it to work out, So you got to be honest with yourself.
Well, I'm going to throw something out there is you can't afford it unless you force it. And it isn't that you can't afford it. It's just that you're not putting the value there. Mm-hmm. And one way to put the value there, and I learned this lesson myself, is just to pay, and then you'll figure it out. And it's not like I can't afford it. It's like, how can I afford it? Because a trip like this, what we're doing, the things that we're actually doing aren't cheap.
No. And it's actually the value of like what they're paying for and like what they're getting. It's like I was saying, like, so the cost of the event, I know seminars for jiu-jitsu that cost that much just for like a 3-day seminar. Right. And they're getting like jiu-jitsu, shooting, ruck, like all the stuff too, food, you know what I mean? Like all these different things, the speakers, so it's a huge value. Yeah. So, well, I'm excited.
I am too. So again, thanks, man. Thanks for hopping on with me.
I'm happy, man. It's been long overdue. It gets me back into the groove of the podcasting here. So,
those vocal cords.
Yeah.
In the microphone.
So we got September 9th, 10th, 11th, right?
Yep. Fly in the 8th.
Flying the 8th, right? Yep. And then you got the event up. Awesome, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep.
Are you going to come out earlier like you were planning, potentially?
Yeah, at least a day.
Well, no, I meant...
no, I need to come. I need to come like in the next few months.
Well, bro, we're in May. So
I need to come
September. So we got May, and it's already May 9th, right? So next weekend is mid-May, and then we got June, July, August, and the event's in September. So we're like 4 months out from the event.
I need to come very soon. I was one thing that's on my list is to talk to you about dates, because I don't want to come and then be wandering around by myself. But I am going to come up. We're going to check it out, and I know check out Leland's place where the homeland is for like he's like right on the lake, so we'll check out his bonfire pit, make sure it's up to par, and check out meet Travis and all the guys, and kind of you can pave the way for us. But like one last time, guys, if you want to get on this, get on it. Like just do it, make the commitment. I think the value is obviously there. If anybody's barking about the money, just do it. It'll pay off. It's good for you. It's good.
Well, you even made it to where they can do it in payment plans too. So
that's 6 months, affordable. No interest. 6 months, no interest. Yeah. PayPal financing. Just click the financing link, and you got half a year to figure it out. You have longer than that if you want, but half a year to figure it out without any kickback. So brotherhoodfatherhood.com/events. That's how you find it. If you can't find it, then just shoot Alex or I a message. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and that's where you'll find us. Alex Joudy and Scott Ramage. Thanks a lot, Alex.
All right, man. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends, your family, and follow us on social media. If you are a father, make sure you join our Facebook group, The Brotherhood of Fatherhood. Hit the subscribe button and tune in next time for more podcasts from the Brotherhood of Fatherhood.